Hey guys, welcome to another animation tutorial. So today we're going to be covering this chest animation with the chest opening and all these coins spilling out. Let's jump straight into this. So I'm going to first off create a plane. This is going to be the floor of our scene because we need something for our dynamics to work with when we add the coins in. So I'm going to make this plane slightly bigger. Let's go ahead and add a cube, and going into our side view, I'm going to move this cube up so it matches the bottom of our plane. And this is going to be our chest. So let's make this cube slightly longer. Make our plane slightly bigger. And I'm going to come and add some segments into our cube. So I'm going to add one in the Y direction and two in the Z directions. And so this is so we can split it in half to get a lid and a bottom of our chest. As well, I'm going to add a curve to the top of this, so I'm going to make it editable and just grab this polygon, pull it up so we get a bit of a curve, grab all three of these, pull it down, and we have a bit of a chest shape. So let's do some quick aesthetic work on this. So in this animation I have some metal rims on this chest. Let's just quickly add them in. So first off, I'm going to select where our lid would be and right click and say split, and this is going to create a second object below our first, and I'm going to name this one lid, and I'm going to name the top one bottom, but the original object still has the lid on it, so I'm just going to delete these polygons, and now we have two separate objects here. Name our floor quickly. Cool. So adding these metal rims on this is quite simple. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my end polygons, right click and say extrude inner, and I'm going to extrude it in by say 10 centimeters, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same with the front and back ones. Right click, extrude inner, 10 centimeters. Cool. Going on to our lid now, I'm going to go ahead and grab the end, right click, extrude inner, extrude this by 10 centimeters as well. Cool. Now this has like some metal rims on the top of this chest. So to add these in, we need some subdivisions on the top here. So I'm gonna go to my loop path and cut tool, click on this, and you're gonna see a bar at the top here. See, this bar is to move this cut up and down. But the best thing about this is this little plus button will add more cuts in, but keep it symmetrical. So if I add another one, you see they're proportionally the same length from either end. So I'm going to add 4 to this, and I'm just going to go to my edge selection and select the two end selections, and because they're proportionally distant from the edge, I'm going to grab my my scale tool and just scale these towards the edge, and we want it to line this up roughly where it is on the bottom of the chest. Cool. I'm actually going to leave this top section quite large on this one, because I'm thinking I might put the key for this on this polygon here, whereas on this chest I had it on the bottom, but I might put it on the top on this one. Cool. So now we just need to extrude all this. So I'm going to select both my objects, control and click on both of them, and we're just going to go around. So if I UL, this is my loop selection, I'm just going to go around and select everywhere that I want to extrude. And the ones on the top you'll have to manually select. Cool, right click and say extrude, and we're going to extrude this by 5 centimeters. You can see now we have all these metal rims on this chest. This is starting to look a lot more like a bit of an old-fashioned crate. So let's add a keyhole to this. We're going to do a ball with this, so I'm going to come up to the top here and grab a ball, and I'm going to go ahead and drop my lid into this ball, and we want to make basically a key shape. So I'm going to grab a cylinder, raise this cylinder up, and turn it on its side. Make it a bit more flat. And when I make this editable, I'm going to go to my polygon selection and go Control A to select everything. Right click and say Optimize. So this is going to connect all the objects because cylinders in Cinema aren't all connected. And I'm just going to select our bottom polygons here, make sure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the same on each side. And holding Control, I'm just going to drag this down. And you can see it's a bit of a keyhole shape. So I'm just going to make this whole object smaller and drag this into position. I might go quite a large keyhole on this. So now I want to drag this into my ball. You want the lid on top and your key on the bottom. And in our ball, I'm going to go ahead and hide new objects to clean this up. And you see now we have a chest with a very large keyhole. In fact, I'm going to make it a bit smaller. Maybe a bit deeper as well. Cool. Looking good. So I'm going to go back and name our ball. Actually, I'm going to put our ball in a null. And we'll see why in a second when we come to animate this. So put this ball in a null, and I'm going to name this null lid. Cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and hide our lid for the moment because we need to work on the inside of this chest. So we actually need a plane in here because inside this chest we have all these coins just laying here, and these coins don't have any dynamics. These are the ones that are just purely here for aesthetics. So we need to create a plane to put these on. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a plane. I'm going to remove subdivisions on my old plane just to get them out of the way, as well as our new plane, get rid of the subdivisions. I'm going to go into my top view, and I'm just going to make this the size of my chest. And raise this up towards the top. Cool. One thing I'm going to do before I start to clone any coins onto this is I'm going to go ahead and make it editable, grab this object, right click and say extrude inner, and just extrude it in slightly. Because when I start cloning coins onto this, it's going to clone them on the whole polygon, but it will mean we're cloning them right near the edge, so they might clip through the edge here, which we don't want. So I'm going to name this plane, say inside, and I'm going to make this a child of my bottom. Cool. Now I'm going to come up and grab a MoGraph cloner, and this cloner is going to be our coins. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a cylinder as well, and this is going to be our coin. So make this smaller. And maybe put some caps on it, make it a bit rounded on the edges. It's probably a bit small. Cool. I'm going to put this in my cloner, and we're going to tell our cloner to clone on an object. But again, like I say, we need to tell it to clone on this inside polygon. So when I drag my object in, there's a selection tab down here. So on my polygon here, I'm going to click this, say set select and set selection. I'm going to name this coins. And then in our cloner, I'm going to drag this selection in, so it's only cloning it on this inside polygon. Cool. So I'm going to name this like, oh sorry, I'm going to up the counts to like 300. We've got quite a lot of coins in here. And again, I'm going to make this a child of my bottom. Cool. So these are all looking very uniform at the moment. So we're going to come up, clicking on our cloner, we're going to come up and grab a MoGraph effector, random effector. I'm also going to drag this in and make it a child. So it's all like nice and tidy up here. And in our random effector, we're going to get rid of parameters. We're going to add a slight bit of uniform scale, so maybe 0.1. And rotation, you can just go crazy on it. Just add random parameters here. So in our position, the only position we want to change on this is our height, basically. So I'm going to reduce these all to 0. And our height is our z-axis. So maybe I just put maybe 0.5. So we just get a little variation in height. And I'm going to come in and make our coin a bit bigger. I mean, this doesn't have to be too neat, because you think of the animation, you rarely get to see inside the chest for very long, and it just looks like a massive reflective materials. So it doesn't have to be too neat. But I'm going to come in and increase our clones to 400 now. Let's go 500. Just want to fill it out a bit. Awesome. Looking good. So I'm quickly going to save this. Cool. So now we can get to animating this. So this is going to be using dynamic tags. So we need to tell our dynamics what we want to have collision tags and what we want to have rigid body tags. So starting off, our floor needs a collision tag. So I'm going to right click on floor and go simulations collision body. And I'm also going to copy this onto both my bottom and my lid. Cool. Now, going back to our lid, there's a good reason I put it in a null earlier. It's because I want to move the origin of this null. This lid is going to be rotating, but we want it rotating on the back of its axis, so it looks like it's connected at the back of it. So taking our axis tool here on the left, this means we can change our axis. I'm going to change the axis of our null to match the back of this chest. So now if I turn off the axis and I start to rotate this, you can see it's rotating on this axis, so it looks like it's opening and closing on the back of the chest. Awesome. So let's start animating this. So I'm going to give this scene 250 frames. And we're just going to keyframe some simple things in to start off with. So let's start with our lid. So if I go down, and this is our auto keyframe here. If I click this and turn this on, so this is now remembered its status at the start of this. If I move this forward, say, to 100 frames, and then rotate this up, have it open by 50 degrees, and then move it again another 30 frames, and then we're just going to close it. And then we can go ahead and turn our auto keyframing off. So if I play this, it's now going to open and close. But as we can see, this animation feels very slow. So we're going to go ahead and change this. So if we shift F3, this is going to open our timeline. And we can start to move these keyframes around a bit. So let's have a look at this. So let's go more towards the start. So this keyframe here is our open keyframe. And all the way back here is our close keyframe. So I might just make these linear, because what they're doing at the moment is smoothing the animation out. But if I go up here, you have three different options. You have a step, linear, and spline. Spline is smoothing it out. Step will just have it suddenly open on the next frame. But if I turn it to linear, it's going to do it a lot more sharply. And we can change all these to linear. And I might go ahead and just move these keyframes along a bit. Cool. So let's go back and play this. So it's a lot more sharp on the opening animation, but maybe this middle animation where it turns itself around, that's the one we want to smooth out. So I'm going to go back to this middle animation and make this linear again. Spline, sorry. Let's have another look at it. So it goes up, kind of slows, and then falls down. Cool, like the look of that? So now we need to add in our coins shooting out of this. So the way I did this is kind of banking on the dynamics in cinema to mess itself up a bit. Because the way I did this, and you can't really tell in this animation, is I had a load of clones suddenly appear, and then because they have dynamics on themselves, and they're all like technically spawning within each other, they're pushing each other apart, which makes them shoot out. It's basically, imagine a glitch in a game where something goes wrong and you get pushed around. This is what's happening. So I was banking on cinema messing up a bit. So there's probably a better way of going about this. But this is just the way I did it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a cloner. And I'm going to go into our other cloner. I'm going to copy my coin into this new cloner. And I'm also going to tell it to be affected by this random effector. Actually, you know what? No, because this random effector has position on it, which we don't want. We're going to go ahead and create a new random effector. And this one can affect this cloner. And then on our new random effector, I'm going to turn off position. Cool. So let's skip forwards to where this chest is open. And we just want to see where these cloners are being put. So this is currently set to linear, which is exactly what I want, but I'm going to put the count to 1. And I'm just going to place it roughly where I think I want it. So like in the middle of this chest. And I'm going to turn my movement to 0. So now if you spawn loads, see they're all going to spawn on top of each other in this like crazy ball. Move up slightly. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to start it at 0. Find about roughly where our chest starts to open, so maybe 10 frames in. And we're going to turn our keyframing on now. And then skip forward to where just before our chest starts to close, so maybe like 100 frames. And we're going to increase our count all the way up to 100. And then turn our keyframing off. So what this is doing is chest is opening and all these clones are being spawned in here. You can see, look, they're all being spawned in as this chest is opening. What I'm hoping to happen here is when we add some dynamics to this, they should just all shoot out. So let's go ahead and add some dynamics to our cloner. So right click our cloner, simulations, and rigid body. And let's just go ahead and play this. So they're actually all stuck in each other at the moment. And there's this ball just rolling around. So I realized what the issue was with this. And it took me longer than I'd like to admit to figure this out. Basically, our rigid body was put on our cloner. So it's trying to keep the dynamics, where it's trying to keep the cloner as one object. So it's not actually separating all our coins out. When in reality, if I move this rigid body to our cylinder, so just on the coins, and then play this animation again, all these coins are going to start pouring out. which is exactly what we want. But if I want to loop this animation, say, we want these coins to disappear before the end of the animation. We can see here, they all come out and then they just minimize themselves into nothing. So there's a possibility of looping this animation. So let's go ahead and do that. So they all pour out. So we're going to start roughly where the chest starts to close. So let's go for about 100 frames in. We're going to turn on our auto keyframe and go to our cylinder. I want to affect both the radius and height of this cylinder. And then let's jump forward to roughly about where the chest closes, about 140 frames. And we're going to reduce both the height and radius of these to 0. And then turn off our auto keyframing. So now the chest opens, they all pour out, and then they disappear as the chest closes. Now there's definitely a few things we can clean up about this to start off with. What I'm not liking is they're all pouring out the back of this chest. And the reason for this is I think our rigid body is applied to this null instead of the ball. So if I apply this to the ball instead, these should connect with the back of our chest now and not pour out the back. Cool. One final thing I think I'm going to change about this is I'm going to have the chest stay slightly open because it's just opening and closing at this point. So if I shift F3 to bring up our timeline, let's find the keyframe where it's open. So here's our keyframe where it's open. If I click on this and control drag, it's basically going to keep the chest open between these two keyframes now. So let's go ahead and play this. And that's looking good. Chest opens, it all pours out. And the chest closes as the coins disappear. I might actually match the chest closing with the coins completely disappearing. So let's move this keyframe back slightly. We want the chest to be nearly closed by this point. Let's go about here. Yep, looking good. Because I'm not using all the frames in this now, I can reduce these frames down to about 170. Get less downtime on our animation. Yeah, looking good. Now the final thing we can do with this is we can go to our F curves in the view section here. And this is basically controlling how smooth some of these animations are. And you can start to mess around with this. So maybe I don't like this curve here. Maybe we just like smooth this out. See now it's giving that like little like bump of momentum to the top of this. You see it like hits the top and bounces back slightly. And that's just from adding this slight curve to this animation at the top here. But yeah, this is how I did this. Obviously you can mess around with this and make this however you want. One final note is, this chest I had all these like little, I call them nails I guess. I actually added them all in manually. There wasn't really any fancy way of doing it, but just make sure when you add these in, especially when you add them to the lid of this chest, you put them inside this null here, so that when the chest moves, all the bits you add to it move with it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.